we're gonna go ahead and get started now. Thank you very much all for coming. I'm Elizabeth Ferrie, co-president of the Harvard Association for Law and Business, and I'm very excited to have Mindy Grossman with us today. Mindy is the president and CEO of WW International, formerly called Weight Watchers, and is frequently recognized as a leading woman in business, including being named to Forbes magazine's 100 most powerful women in the world on 4 occasions. Before that, Mindy has had a long history of success over her 40-year career. She was president of Chaps Ralph Lauren, president and CEO of Polo Jeans Company, and then she moved to Nike, where she helped grow the apparel business by over $1 billion as its global vice president. After that, she moved to HSN, the home shopping network, where she helped transform the company and helped it through a successful IPO as its CEO. Mindy was appointed CEO of Weight Watchers in 2017, now called WW, where she has helped transform the company and push its focus more toward beyond just dieting to overall wellness and form partnerships with Oprah and DJ Khaled. Mindy, we are so thrilled to have you today at Harvard Law School. So to start off, I just wanted to ask you about, you have a really interesting childhood background story. I wanted to ask you, like, how exactly has your childhood background informed your sense of purpose and responsibility in life?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's been great. It's great. It's also shocking every time I hear 40 years in business. You know, my background has had a huge impact in the trajectory of my life. So, you know, my parents, you know, my mother wasn't able to finish high school. She had a mother who was ill. My father finished high school, went into the Air Force. Got married, my mom was 18, my dad was 22, and all my mom wanted was a child, and my father worked nights in the produce business, so he'd go in at midnight. Tried, and finally, when my mother was 30, my father was 34, still childless and couldn't afford to adopt a child. My father went in to work one night at midnight, and his boss, who was very fond of my dad, waited there, and when my father walked in, he handed him an envelope with a check, and it was the money to adopt a child, and I'm the child. And you know, I was adopted when I was 3 days old, and from the moment I remember, number one, I was told I was adopted and I was special. Number two, that I could do and accomplish anything I wanted, and nothing could prevent that. It was, you know, what I could do. And I think because of that, what it instilled in me, even from a very young age, that if I was given this gift, and it truly is a gift, and I don't use that gift, then I have wasted not only an opportunity, but what I was given. So I grew up pretty serious with that, you know, very significant purpose on how am I going to use this to have the greatest impact I can for my family, for myself. You know, and I think because of that, you know, I look back now and say, did I rush it? You know, I finished high school as a junior, went right into college, got engaged when I was 19. You know, was planning to go to law school, right? You know, so, and you know, it was everything was, you know, predictive. This is what I was doing, and I was in my last semester of college at GW. And I literally woke up one morning. I'm sure I thought about it a little bit more than that, and had an epiphany that, you know, this isn't my life. There's a different path, and if I don't make the change now, you know, I might regret it later. So imagine, you know, calling your stereotypical Jewish mother and saying, hey, I got something to tell you. I'm breaking my engagement, I'm not getting married, I've decided not to go to law school in the fall, and I'm leaving right now and moving to New York and figuring it out. You can imagine. But that's what I did. And, you know, I was supporting myself and moved to New York, and the reality is that one moment of making that decision was probably the most pivotal moment in my life, because I realized that not taking a risk is often a greater risk than taking a very strategic, thoughtful risk in the first place.
So you abandoned your law school plans and you walked into the New York fashion industry at age 20 with no previous fashion experience. How did you navigate that world and rise up to the point?
Yeah, it was interesting. So when I moved to New York, once I decided that I potentially wasn't going to law school, and my reason for moving there was kind of to reset and rethink what it was I wanted to do. And I felt that I wanted to do something in a creative business. So I started looking at the time on the media side of business and the fashion side of business. And I remember having 2 job offers. This is 1977, so there was something called Allied Artists Video Division when it was that's how old. And I had a job offer to be the assistant to the president of the international division of a menswear portfolio company, which I thought was really interesting. It was diverse, it was global, it was in the fashion, it was multi-branded. And I remember being in the interview and finally he asked me, do I take shorthand? I said, no, but I take fast longhand. And I realized you also have to be a little creative when you're trying to get something. Anyway, he hired me and I ended up spending quite a number of years in the menswear business, but I only stayed in that job for maybe a year. And the reason was I quickly realized that as a woman, I was not going to be given a path in either the sales side, the merchandising side. That was reserved for men. And then, that's all. My other philosophy is, you have to identify where you're going to have the opportunity to have the greatest success. And at that time, there weren't a lot of women in the menswear business, but I ended up going to work for a number of other companies where I felt there was going to be a greater opportunity. I was fortunate to work for some great designers, Jeffrey Banks. I worked for a company called Marona Sport. It was one of the hottest companies in the 80s, and then Jeffrey Banks, and then I worked for Willie Smith, who was probably at the time the most preeminent African-American designer, first designer to believe that fashion came from culture up, not couture down, first designer to do partnerships with incredible artists like Keith Haring and Barbara Kruger, way before Target went to democratize fashion. And the experience that I had in those circumstances and the opportunity to live in such diverse backgrounds, which wasn't traditional in the fashion industry, also was the reason that throughout my career, this intersection of culture, fashion, street, design, and it's so relevant today more than any other time, and it was just burgeoning then. It's also the decision, it's also probably one of the reasons I made the decision not to go into the luxury business, where I had a number of opportunities. I've always loved businesses that are democratized and can touch a lot of people. And I use the expression, I always want to be in aspirationally accessible businesses. So even the businesses I ran for Ralph were the ones that were broader, or my Nike experience, etc.
So after spending a lot of time in the traditional fashion industry, you pivoted all the way to sportswear at Nike. And then from Nike, you moved to HSN. So for each transition, how did you know it was the right time to make the new career jump?
Yeah, I've always, I think people get used to me now that when I make a move, they know that they're going to go what she's doing, some more than others. But if I go backwards, I think where my big pivot really started, I've been working for Tommy Hilfiger when it was at the heyday and the rise of the business. And I kept getting approached, by someone that's like, you need to go take over Chaparral Horn. You need to work for Ralph. It's a division of another company. Ralph is going to take it away if somebody doesn't go in and, really turn it around. It's a great opportunity. You'd be president of the division. And it was a small business at the time, not doing well, a division of company run by a woman, interestingly enough. And I finally sat back and looked at it, and I just had my daughter probably a year and a half before that. And I said, I can see clearly what needs to be done. I know the formula. I think I can create a whole new business genre. There's not going to be a lot of opportunities for a woman at this stage of my career to be president of a menswear company, and it's an affiliation with Ralph Lauren. So I decided to make the move. People thought I was a little crazy because of what was happening at Tommy. And I went into, Warnaco was the name of the company at the time, and took over the business. And we created a whole new formula for menswear and for designers. So main floor collections in stores that couldn't have the high-end designer, and that did have the high-end designer, and then shops in the other stores. And we took the business from 25 million losing money to over $250 million, making very successfully in less than 3 years. And I was also given responsibility to run all their other menswear businesses, from Christian Dior to Valentino to other things. So I've been at the company 3 years, and what I mean as a defining moment, just because I was doing incredibly well, being treated well, performing well, the culture was toxic, demeaning, toxic, short-term, not an environment that I wanted to be in. And I really had the revelation that it didn't matter how well I was doing, whether that was financially or the business, that if I was going to stay there, it meant that I was complicit and that I was accepting the fact that this culture could exist. I remember going home that one night and saying to my husband, look, I'm resigning tomorrow. I don't have another job. And I needed to have another job. It was the two of us. My daughter was 3. I said, but I know I'm doing the right thing. And if I do the right thing, I think I'll ultimately be more successful. And I went in the next morning, and I remember going and resigning. And finally, she looked at me and she goes, are you resigning? And I said, yes. She said, you either have another job, you're independently wealthy, or you're stupid. And I said, or D, none of the above. And I was escorted out by security, standing on Park Avenue and 38th going, I really just did that, didn't I? And I remember going home, and I just knew and then I said, I'll see what I'm going to do. And a day later, Ralph Lauren and his partner at the time called me and said, look, we're devastated you've left, but if you're going to go anywhere, we want you to be with us. We don't really have a job for you, but if you would come in, we'll invest in you, and we'll give you the title of, Vice President of New Business Development. And why don't you work on the strategy and development and the creation of what other businesses we should be in? We're willing to give it a shot if you're going to give it a shot. And I said, absolutely. And so I went in, and it was the first time in my life that I didn't really have a team, right? And it was almost like a gap year, in that I was able to really look at the entire marketplace and what the needs were, and really understanding, from a brand perspective, what to do. So I ended up working on 2 different business plans, and one of them was the concept of Polo Jeans Company, and found the partner to do it, and then they asked me to go over, run it, and be CEO, which was an incredible experience. I really, really, really appreciate entrepreneurs, because I did a startup, but it was somebody else's money, right? And we were able to grow the business from 0 to 450 million in a few years, and it got acquired by Jones New York. But if I had not made that decision to leave, it wouldn't have propelled me to have the opportunity to get a phone call one day from Phil Knight. He had come back into the company in 1999 when the company had a lot of issues, labor issues, really failed Atlanta marketing campaign, etc. And he was building a new executive team. They had never had anyone with fashion or apparel experience running their apparel business. It was usually from the footwear business or from the sport business, and said, would you come in and run this? And there are three companies I always said I wanted to work for at the time: Ralph Lauren, Nike, and Disney. So I worked for Ralph, I worked for Nike, and I had a 7-year strategic partnership with Disney. So I figured, okay. I was offered the job, but the reality was that for many reasons I couldn't move to Portland, Oregon. And my parents were older, and with practically tears in my eyes, I had to call and turn the job down. The next day I get a call from Phil saying, okay, how can we make this work? We're willing to try and make it work if you could be willing to try and make it work. And figure out some form of part-time here in New York and out of the country. And so I remember, saying, okay, we need to have a meeting. So it was my husband, my daughter, and the nanny. And said, can we make this work? Do we have the infrastructure and do we have the support to see if we can make this work? Thinking that I would try it for a year or so and then make a decision. And we all signed up for it. And somehow I did this crazy commute between a place in New York, my family, and Oregon, and I was out of the country 30% of the time. And 6 years went by, and we made it work. Not that there weren't challenges, but it was an incredible experience. To come into the company. It was when they launched their new mission and vision to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. If you have a body, you're an athlete. So this idea of democratizing. I had the unbelievable opportunity to start their first Women's Leadership Council and lead a lot of the inclusion and diversity efforts at the company, which was an incredible experience. Work with incredible athletes, work on a World Cup, work on Olympics, but also working on making the best T-shirts we could ever make. And as much as I had men's, women's, kids, also wanted to position them as a women's brand. So really incredible experience. What I say was the move from, Polo Jeans Company to Nike was kind of like going to get your MBA before you wanted to do that next thing.
So I want to talk about Weight Watchers now. So in 2017, you had a variety of other career options ahead of you. What compelled you to choose Weight Watchers?
So what I'll do is let me just explain the HSM one. So there I was at Nike for 6 years, and my daughter was going into her later years in high school, and it just was not doable anymore. And as hard as it was, I said, I can't do this. But where are you going to go after you've had such an incredible experience? And I'm getting calls for all these different things. And finally, I have a home in the Hudson Valley. I went up to I made a list. I'm a big believer in lists and strategic decisions, because as you go along in your career, I think too many people, get the phone calls and they think something looks like a shiny penny. No, what is purposeful and significant on what you're going to do? And my criteria is I have to be passionate about it, it has to be purposeful for my career, and I have to have great impact. But I made a list. I said, I want to get back closer to my family. I want a business that is really going to take advantage of all the changes that are happening right now in consumer behavior. I was fortunate to be traveling around the world extensively, spent a lot of time in Japan where mobile was exploding years before that happened here. Something entrepreneurial or transformative, and I've always been the person who chooses transformation or growth, or I'm a masochist or something. But I ended up getting a call from, and I shared that with a couple of the recruiters that kept, and I get a call from someone that says, okay, I have everything that you want on your list. You need to go have lunch with Barry Diller and it's for the CEO of IAC Retail. And I said, well, look, lunch with Barry Diller would be interesting, but what the hell is IAC Retail? I'd never even heard of it. She said, well, it's this home shopping network and a group of catalog businesses in the direct space, like Frontgate, Ballard Design, Garnhill. I had never heard of HSN or Home Shopping Network or QVC or anything. So I said, well, let me do this. Let me do my homework. Give me a couple of weeks. And I'll set up the lunch with Barry, and if for nothing else, I can give him a perspective. So I literally spent the next 2 weeks immersed in looking at this universe, going, what would I do with this? Because at the time it was very dated, very and I'm like, no. And so I'm flipping back and forth between the channels, and at the time I really liked watching Food Network. So I was watching Food Network, and all of a sudden I clicked on HSN, and Wolfgang Puck was on. And he was amazing, entertaining, fun, cooking, selling, talking, and this light bulb went on. And I said, okay, I completely get it. It's not a selling network. It's an editorial platform for entertainment, storytelling, and content where you can get the product. So imagine if you put together Food Network, HGTV, DIY, style, but you could actually get the product. And so I went in and had lunch with Barry, gave him the vision, and he was like, go forth, I'll support the transformation. Well, if you can imagine when it got announced that I was leaving Nike, because you work for Nike, you're the cool kid. You go to a cocktail party, you work for Nike. To go do this, people had truly thought I had a midlife crisis. And I said, no, I see it. And one of the things you realize, especially if you're one that loves transformation, most people see what's right in front of their eyes. They're not seeing the vision, and you have to take them forward, and you have to be the seller and the storyteller of that vision. When to do that, we relaunched the business. I started in May 2006, we relaunched the business. In August 2007, it went like this. It was an entertainment platform. And then got a call from Barry in November of that year. When you get a call from Barry, it's Sunday night at 10 o'clock. It's either really good news or probably really bad news. It was really good news. I was going to, and I was hoping it would happen, that I would spin out and take the company public in about a $3.5 billion, it was about company at the time. And great. Well, when was I on the roadshow to take the company public? The summer of 2008. We were probably the last IPO before the world crashed. So we took the company public in August 2008. Stock came out at about $10. World started falling apart. Couldn't get coverage. Nobody understood, what it was we were doing, and is that what somebody was going to invest in? And I'll never forget, December 2008, the stock hit a low of $1.43, and our market cap was smaller than our receivable balance. And I remember saying to the board, and I had a very supportive board, we are going to lean in because we know what we have, and we actually have an opportunity to really prove the incredible efficacy of this business model and what we could do. We actually grew in 2008 and 2009 on the HSN side of the business. The higher end catalog took a tougher time. And it proved the resiliency of the business model. And it really took the company into trajectory. It was also some of the toughest leadership times for me, especially in that 1 year period where, oh, by the way, I was commuting again between New York and Florida. And I remember my phone only worked on the terrace of my apartment, and I called my husband, I called it talk me off the ledge call, because when you do become the CEO, it can be lonely at times, because your job is to motivate the company, and all I thought about every single day was 6,000 people and their families, and what we needed to do to make them feel confident and make them come into work and realize that we were going to be a company that was going to persevere through this no matter what our decisions we made. And you know, the first thing I did when I got to the company was reinvigorate the culture, and I've been quoted many times on culture trumps strategy. It doesn't mean you don't have a strategy. But that decision to lean in and be offensive versus defensive, and if you look at companies during that time period, the ones who did that are the ones that generally came out stronger companies. And so did that and then ran the company for another X number of years. And then to your point, you know, we were getting ready to put a new CEO in. I was going to transition to chairman. You know, I was on other boards and philanthropic efforts, you know, and that would have been great. But in my heart, I knew I wanted to do one more thing. But I also knew I didn't want to be in retail and I didn't want to be in fashion. That if I was going to do that one more thing, you know, I wanted it to be something different. So as you can imagine, what am I getting all the calls for? Go run these giant retail organizations or go run these giant fashion organizations. And I kept saying, no, it's not what I want to do. And in the last 2 years that I was at the company, I was spending a lot of time really looking at where consumer was going, how we were going to pivot our product, our programming. And so I ended up spending a lot of time speaking around the world on this idea that the brands of the future have to take technology married to meaning and use it to help people lead more fulfilled, connected lives. No matter what business you were in, purpose was going to come up, which had me spending a lot of time in the health and wellness space, saying, I think this would be a really interesting place to play. But I didn't want to be the tech startup, you know, I didn't know what that would mean. And then October 2015, I was watching CNBC, I saw that, you know, Oprah had taken a stake in the company. But more than that the company wanted to transform from not just being the leader in weight, but really tap into the need and the zeitgeist of being more holistic around wellness to help people lead, you know, more fulfilled lives. Never thinking I was going to be at the company, I just thought that was interesting. My husband's a financial trader. I said, I think we should buy some stock. So with that, I don't know what we bought. Again, forgot about it. And then about a year later, I saw that they had parted ways with the CEO of the company. Still didn't totally think about it. And finally, I literally remember it was around Thanksgiving getting a call about running another big retail company. I think it might have been Tiffany. I can't remember what it was. And I said, look, I told you that's just not interesting to me. I said, but wait a second. Don't you guys have the Weight Watchers search? She said, yes, my colleague does. Why? I said, why hasn't anybody called me about that? She said, you know, well, Mindy, it's smaller than what you're doing, and it's not, and I didn't think, and they've got financial debt and that. I go, this is where people don't think, because you're looking at what's there, you're not looking what the potential opportunity could be. And she said, well, are you interested? And I said, well, I don't know if I'm interested, but I'm really curious. And that's how the journey began. I also had made the decision that if I was going to do one more thing, that I wanted to deliver more than just a financial return on equity. I wanted in some way to deliver a human return on equity. And how could I do that in this world? And this was what really tapped into what I thought a huge opportunity was. I spent a lot of time with the board. I took a lot of time to make the decision. And part of it is, I think all of you are seeing what's happening in the world today. And I've had a tough couple of weeks, and I'll talk about that. You know, all of these companies and boards and private equity say that the business needs transformation. It's the most overused word right now. And the reality is, the reason why so many CEOs lately come in and are gone in less than 2 years is transformation does not happen overnight. And you have to be strategic, you have to have starts and stops, you have to stick with a long-term vision, you need the support, you need the investment. And I wanted to make sure that the board, including Oprah, the chairman of the board, the big shareholders, were committed to this. And so I wrote a 4-page manifesto of what I thought the business could be, what I thought I could do, where I thought I could go, and I sent it to the board, and I said, this is what I see. This is transformation, and it could be cathartic, could be amazing, and we could change the health trajectory of so many more people around the world, and we could deliver the financial and the human return on equity, but we need to be aligned. And we need to be steadfast, and this is what we're going to do, and this is what we're going to invest in. And that's what, I'm fortunate to have a board that's, belief in, what we can do. And so ended up taking the role in the company, and so it was announced. And, this time it was interesting because I don't think in any way it was what people expected. But on the flip side, knowing me, the people who know me weren't as surprised because it was something I've been, believing in around purpose-driven, and that you can deliver great, financial returns as well as human returns. So, yeah, so I've been at the company since July 2017, and it's funny, it was a crazy year. As I was in the midst of talking to the company, my daughter had a baby, we had to move back to New York, we made a wedding, it was insane. But, you go into focus mode. And, we have spent the last 18 months in, significant transformation mode, both of what we're delivering as a brand, what we're delivering as a product, the impact we're making on people's lives, the investments we're making in technology. Spectacular 2017, spectacular 2018. And we had, a bumpy start to 2019. But we're not deviating from kind of the vision, but if you have to do resets around transformation, you have to really be willing to put yourself out there and talk about it and, make sure you have the belief and you can deal with volatility of stock prices. And, I'm a big believer that the true sign of leadership is not when things are good. They're kind of when you go through the tough times. You got to keep people aligned and you have to stay true to your vision. But it's an incredibly exciting time for what we have an opportunity to do with the brand and the business and technology, global expansion. And, it's definitely, and the other day it was interesting, I took out the manifesto I gave to the board in, April 2017. It's been exciting, that's what we're doing. In the last year alone, we launched the most successful nutrition program in the company's history. We took our science and created Fit Points 2.0. We integrated audio fitness with Active. We created a whole mindset and mindfulness of the company, integrated exclusive content with Headspace, launched our first loyalty and rewards program, created and deepened our communities, announced a significant number of partnerships aligned with helping people get healthy, and truly created an ecosystem, of support for people. Opened our first WW Freestyle Cafe in places like Barclays Center, a partnership with Blue Apron to bring healthy eating. So, it's been exciting, but whenever you're gonna, transform this incredible 57-year-old brand to mean something so much more to people, you have to refine along the way.
So you mentioned that Oprah is a board member and she has a large stake in the company. What's it like getting to work with Oprah, and what lessons have you learned from her?
Yeah, who wouldn't like to have Oprah on their board? She's been fantastic, incredibly engaged. She's been at every board session since I've been at the company. I've spent a lot of time with her one-on-one. Here's what Oprah has that is so special. There was an article in, I think, Financial Times magazine it was, that said that her ability to practice ultimate discretion, what she will do and what she won't do, and the filters she looks through. And she has her own purpose filter. And when we built the new mission and vision and strategy for the WW brand, we created a purpose filter. It's in every conference room, it's on every person globally in the company's desk of what they have to go through before they make a decision, whether that's a product, a partner, what they're going to do. And she's been an incredible partner with that, and she's been incredibly accessible. Like, I can text and go, I need to run something by you as we're thinking through this. And that's been a real learning. And Ralph Lauren was very similar in that way. He'd say, Mindy, it's more important what you learn to say no to your brand than even what you say, because you can, make a mistake that can damage a man in 5 seconds. So, that's been of great value and thought process. And actually this year, we recently announced the woman who's been her chief of staff for about 8 years and produced a lot of her events and things are coming to work with me, and we're going to be creating a multi-year series of events, experiences, in communities, in arenas, really to bring this idea of how do you live your best, healthiest way. So it's WW Presents. So we're excited to be working on that. It's an incredible project.
So last question before I open it up to the audience. So Mindy, you are one of only 51 women CEOs of Fortune 1000 companies, and this platform has given you tremendous visibility to have an impact. How do you use that responsibility to have an impact to
Yeah. So it goes back to this ultimate discretion, and it also goes back to my philosophy that I share a lot, that at every single point in your career, be passionate about what it is you want to do, make sure it's purposeful, and aim to have the ultimate impact you can have. And the impact I could have in my first job was, how do I make people as successful as possible? I have the same vision today, but now that, to your point, I've worked and I'm thrilled to have the platform that I have and to be in the position that I am. And if I do not use that to create positive change, then I have wasted 40 years of my career. Diversity is incredibly important to me. And so, if you look at over the course of a year, where I'm going to speak and what I'm going to do, it's either talking on behalf of the vision we have to change the health trajectory of the world and what we're doing, or it's around diversity and the need for businesses today to have diversity at the forefront of everything they do. And I speak all the time. If anybody read, Larry Fink's BlackRock letter, when he talked about that, if a company today does not embrace at the core element of every level diversity, they have made a strategic business decision not to be as successful as they can. Because the more diverse companies, the more diverse teams are going to be more successful. The second thing that's important to me is, as much as I want to speak with women, young women entrepreneurs, and be supportive, I have to use my platform to talk to men. Because when you only have 51 out of 1,000 CEOs that are women, we need over 950 to be better educated to make sure that there's a pipeline of talent and they're building cultures that are going to support that talent. And there are differences for women. I was telling you earlier, I'm involved in the engineering school, my husband and I, at Columbia University, and we've had a scholarship endowment the last 10 years supporting women and underserved minority in their PhD programs. So our scholarship allows them to live while they're pursuing their studies, and now we've endowed a full scholarship. And I recently had a meeting with the groups and said, what can we do? Because I'm just taking Columbia, I'm sure it's similar here, almost 50% of the incoming class in the undergraduate side of the engineering school are women. But by the time you get to the master's and to the trajectory, the numbers dwindle dramatically. What do we have to do to support women, to create cultures, to allow for upward mobility? So I speak about that a lot, and I think it's really important. And I've gone from being annoyed to being enraged, and now I'm just psychotic about the whole thing. There are areas where we can point to, some improvements in metrics. You look at boards, but we're not making the progress at the level we need to make and in the time frame we need to make. So, for example, I've been at the company, for 18 months, and we've already put on 3 new board members, all women, 1 African American, but they're not there necessarily because they're women and they're African American. They bring experience and diversity of their backgrounds and their thought to the board, which has changed the board dynamic in what we have to do. And you have to be very purposeful, and you have to have the support of the chairman and the rest of the board. And so now 5 out of 11 of our board members are female and diverse females. And I can tell you that from the first board meeting to this board meeting, there's been a discernible difference in the conversation. So I think you have to, you have to act. You have to show why your actions can yield results. You have to be overt in your communication with people on why it's a business imperative and so important. And you kind of call people out if they're not paying attention.
Well, with that, I think we're going to open it up to audience questions.
Mindy, if you could summarize your career trajectory in one word, what word would you use?
Transformer. I've always liked this idea of how do you accelerate growth through creativity, transformation, tapping into insights. And those are the things that, have always interested me. I'm obsessively curious. I think no matter what you do in life, if you're in the beauty business, don't just stay in that lane. I remember saying, when I got to HSN, and I said, the comment that I've made is, I have actually never been 100% qualified for any position I've taken. And that's actually a good thing. One of the other things, I actually think women default to this a little bit more than men. They'll keep waiting till they think they're perfect, right? You're never going to be perfect. So if you believe and you have a vision for what you want to do, and you strategically understand that you have the core capabilities, you can take those risks. So here I went into a business. I knew nothing about TV broadcast. I didn't have experience in most of the product categories that were sold. Didn't have, direct to consumer, but I had a vision for what the business could be, and I knew if I surrounded myself with really talented, smart people, could transform the business. But what happened, because we were in so many businesses, on one day I could be at the Consumer Electronics Summit, the next day I could be at a big beauty summit, the next day I could be at a jewelry trade show. And the thing I tell everyone is you got to get out of your comfort zone. So if you're running a beauty business, you should go to the Consumer Electronics Show. I said that 10 years ago, and if you fast forward today, the amount of real estate that is being devoted to things like health and sleep and beauty technology, all of these things are coming together. And so, if you're going to rethink, you can't just stay in one industry or one place. You have to really have the curiosity inherently to want to think about things differently.
What's your vision for Weight Watchers in the future?
So what we did, so I started there in July, and I had done a lot of pre-work, but I did a 30-day deep dive and listening tour into every area of the business globally. And the number one thing that was identified, if we really wanted to have the impact we wanted to have, but if we really wanted to move the brand into a different perspective, we had to reframe our mission, our vision, our purpose, the impact we wanted to have, the strategies, and ultimately what the actions were going to be. So we brought a team together from within the company, a core working team and an extended team from around the world, and said, we're going to build this. We actually did partner with a company called SY Partners. I don't know if you're familiar with them. Basically, they partner with CEOs and their teams who want to affect transformation. So when Howard Schultz came back into Starbucks, that's who we worked with. Ginny Rometty at IBM, the work that Kaiser Permanente is doing, they partner. You do the work. They're helping to facilitate. And I'm a big believer that you don't bring in a consultant to do the work. You do the work, and you can have support. And to get to that point, I actually called, and I'm on the CEO advisory board for the American Heart Association. I had a whole conversation with the CEO of CVS, and I said, okay, Larry, tell me how you made the tobacco decision. Tell me how you made it, because we're going to be making some hard decisions in our business. And he said, Mindy, we brought in a traditional consulting firm, and they did a whole bunch of work, and the team, and we looked at it, and we said, no, this isn't right. And we put millions of dollars of work into the trash can and said, we're going to build this. And once they built it and said, we are going to be a health and wellness company, that decision was made for us, whether it was $1 billion decision or a $2 billion decision, because we have to think of the future and what we want to be. And if we don't make that decision, we could go backwards. So it was an interesting corollary because we had to make a lot of decisions. We got out of every single food product we made around the world because it didn't live up to a healthy living brand. And we had to reformulate, refabricate. So what we built, so our new purpose was we inspire healthy habits for real life, for people, for families, communities, the world, for everyone. And we were going to be a brand that was going to democratize wellness and make it accessible and be people's partners. We built kind of the tenets of how we were going to do that around community, around personalization, around nutrition and everything we were going to do. And with that, we built that strategic plan to go forward in that trajectory and be people's ecosystem of health. And the way we described it simplistically was if you have Amazon for shopping and Netflix for entertainment and Spotify for music, we want to be your everyday partner for health and wellness, whether it's in the employer space, whether it's in the consumer space, or whether it's in the community space. And so someone, similar to what you're asking me said, okay, in 5 years, what would success look like? And I said, in 5 years, I want to be amongst a group of people standing on the stage at the Global Wellness Summit and saying that because of how we partnered together and the efforts that we were making, we've changed the health trajectory of the world. Because right now, people are talking about the wellness economy in very sexy terms. It's $4.2 trillion, and everybody wants to call themselves a wellness company. And that's all fine. The world is getting healthier every single day. And it has reached such epic proportions that it is staggering. And the more, I learn, the more staggering it is. Today's 2-year-old has a better chance of being obese than healthy. If we do not do something, millennials would be the most obese generation in history. And the trickle-down effect of that, in terms of diabetes, in terms of the implications on mental health, are very significant. So the traditional routes are not working. And so, you know, if you talk to any of the 18,000 people within our organization, whether they be the 16,000 people in the field, touching people every day, or 2,000 people in corporate, you know, you will find that we're very much aligned around that purpose, because if we feel that we do that and the more people we can touch, and we do have the human impact, we will deliver the financial impact. But that truly is the vision.
I think we're out of time for questions, but if you have further questions, you can come up at the end. So thank you very much for coming, everybody, and give a round of applause.
Thank you for having me.